very controversial assumption if one was to make it. I talked a little bit about epistemology. That simply means how we know what we know. And of course, since we're doing academic work, we need to be able to explain how we know what we know. And in our work, maybe less so in essays, but certainly it's the case with dissertations, we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to explain how we know what we know, where we're coming from. And one way to do that in rigorous academic terms is to be clear about the methodology that we've adopted and to be clear about the theoretical framing that we've adopted as well. So, a couple of things that I didn't mention in today's session but will do now. The first is that maybe the progress of an academic field can be measured by questions relating to empirical evidence, questions relating to theoretical developments, and questions also relating to methodology as well. So according to this slide, there are three main issues that can help to evaluate the intellectual progress of an academic field. The first issue is the set of empirical phenomena and questions being studied. So that's the evidence of what actually has gone on in the real world, as it were. That's the first thing. So the second thing is the second issue is the state of theoretical development. Theory has been devised to explain the social world, and empirical evidence can be seen in the light of theory. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is that methodology is used to form theoretical claims and test their empirical implications. So in a way, what I'm suggesting here is, I suggested before that theory and methodology have a relationship. I'll go one stage further in this presentation and argue that empirical evidence, theoretical development, and methodology are all related to each other. And one question might be, can you have one without the other? So that's a question that we can come back to and have a discussion about as we move forward through the weeks of this course. I talked to you a little bit about the importance of being clear about definitions in terms of the discussion that we were having about the criteria that we mark against, in terms of discussions about essays, good essay writing practice, and in terms of discussions about dissertations. It's important to talk about definitions, so I'm going to do that, but one of the things that I did not do was give you a definition of methodology and what that was, and indeed the same argument applies to theory. I didn't give you a definition of theory either. So this slide says methodology refers to systematically structured or codified ways to test theories. Methodology is particularly useful in the context of a progressive research program where hypotheses lend themselves to falsification. Given the range of assumptions about properties of actors and their interactions, various hypotheses can be deduced and ideally corroborated or rejected by empirical case studies or in quantitative research. So, systematically structured or codified ways to test theories. So the implication of this is that there's a relationship between methodology on the one hand and theory on the other. So theory, on the other hand, since we've just defined, or at least given one definition of methodology, theory is defined by the American Heritage Dictionary as follows: as systematically organized knowledge applicable in a relatively wide variety of circumstances, especially a system of assumptions, accepted principles, and rules of procedure devised to analyze, predict, or otherwise explain the nature or behavior of a specialized set of phenomena. And a slight spelling issue there with that word. So, first of all, we've had a definition of methodology. We've not studied competing definitions, nevertheless there is one definition. Second of all, we've had a definition by the American Heritage Dictionary of what theory is, and my argument is that there's a basic assumption that I'm making, at least, that there's a relationship between methodology on the one hand and theory on the other. So, what does theory do? Theory provides clear and precise explanations of important phenomena. It focuses scholarly attention on puzzles that set the research agenda for students in the field. Ideally, theory should also offer a set of testable and falsifiable hypotheses, thus encouraging systematic re-evaluation of its main arguments through different research methods. Now, I'm happy to stand by with this definition and what this says, but the implications that of this statement, so theory provides clear and precise explanations of important phenomena. I'm happy with that. The next bit, though, ideally theory should also offer a set of testable and falsifiable hypotheses. Smacks of realism, and it smacks of positivism. It smacks of the objective so-called scientific approach to research that's associated with positivism as a methodology and with realism as a theory. And so I want to just be a little bit cautious about this, because the extent to which we are under an obligation to test and indeed falsify hypotheses when using a post-positivistic methodological orientation is highly debatable. So I'd say we wouldn't necessarily be seeking to do that when we're doing post-positivist research. So when I say that, I mean we wouldn't necessarily be seeking to test and falsify hypotheses using post-positivism. So this statement is quite a positivist one. It has a very positivistic, scientific, objective, observable, observation-like sort of orientation to it. So, but anyway, there is an explanation as to what theory does do, provides a clear and precise explanation of important phenomena. So, moving on, theory and methodology, or really it should have been the other way around, methodology and theory are most beneficial when they accompany each other for the advancement of knowledge. While theory provides explanations of particular phenomena based on specific assumptions, theoretical arguments have to be augmented with systematic methods of testing that help guard against chance and selection bias. So, thus further reinforcing the relationship between theory and methodology. And as I've explained, methodology may be understood to be a foundation upon which a theory is built. So that's useful and extends our discussion and understanding of what methodology is, what theory is, and what the relationship between both of them are. So returning to positivism briefly, which research procedure is best? There's been this long-standing appreciation, and I think that we moved on in methodological terms in terms of sophistication and development in the field, but we began, if you like, even in the field of peace research not so long ago, with assumptions about how we might go about conducting research. And so the scientific approach, positivism, realism, was associated in the early days of peace research with various important scholars. Lay people will probably, if asked about what research is, will probably talk about some variation on a theme of positivism of a scientific approach, for example. So traditionally it was thought that there was a single correct set of procedures for investigating phenomena and presenting findings based on a scientific model of research. People sometimes still think that social research should model itself on research in the natural sciences. Controversial, but very common, I think. And just to give an example of that, as Anne Ryan has pointed out in a very interesting paper on post-positive research approaches, public discussions about social research are usually set in a scientific framework, and they centre on questions about hypotheses, as I've just demonstrated, about how big samples are, about how representative a sample may be, how you can generalize if you have a small sample, was there a control group, the validity of a piece of research, is assessed by how well it meets these scientific criteria. So the control group is particularly relevant to the discussion we're having after the class about measuring in research. Very difficult to do, and maybe sometimes necessary to avoid in some senses. So the question about, and I think that we touched on this very briefly, is can we, using the scientific methodology of objectivity, of observing phenomena whereby we draw truth claims and objective facts, can the scientific methodology of positivism be applied to an understanding of the social world?